Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known in this realm as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me for some very special palaver here on Hail to Stephen King, a very special Valentine's edition of this show. Now, everyone knows Valentine's Day is February 14th. It is the day of love, and you know, some people, they focus more so on romantic love, some family love, friend love, whatever. And I think that those are all valid and so on, but today we are going to be talking about romantic love. In point, the most romantic couplings that Stephen King has ever put to page. Now, some of these are novels, some of these are from short stories. I held nothing back. I researched and searched back through all of my different stories where I feel like there was enough of a love or a romantic aspect that was just really important and had some relevance. And it's a day that has very different relevance for me because of the fact that my beloved Yaya, my Yaya Lola, was born on February 14th. And so even though she is long past, unfortunately, I think of her every single year on this day. And she had a wonderful love story herself with coming from Greece, and she was 18, goes to New York, moves to Phoenix, ends up meeting my father Callahan, my grandfather Callahan to be specific, and yeah, he was a bartender. She saw him in a bar, and she was like pointing out to him, to her friend, and she's like, I'm gonna marry that guy. And lo and behold, that's what happened. They rode off on that motorcycle of his. He was all, you know, James Dean'd out even before that was like quite the thing yet. And yeah, they had an amazing love story where they were married on Christmas Day. And so Christmas had an additional significance to me because of that too, growing up. But yeah, guys, it's a beautiful holiday that I know started out with a massacre and took on a completely different message as time goes on. So maybe that's good that we're talking about this here on Hail to Stephen King. But have you ever been in love? Any of you? I have once, and it's really interesting when you see just this put to page. And you just feel that genuineness that King is so adept at putting, you know, just to a fully realized level. You know, you genuinely feel the love between these characters on that romantic level, whether it's in 10, 20 pages, or whether it's in a huge sprawling adventure, you know. And there's going to be very short stories here, as I said, and novels. So I'm going to start out with an honorable mention. So I didn't go with obsessive love. I didn't go with love that goes sour in some horrible way, with the exception of this one story. And I feel like the Tommyknockers as an honorable mention, and I'm doing 14 of these, by the way, guys. Haha, see what I'm doing there? So as a 15th honorable mention, and hi Cecil, yeah, Bobby Anderson and James Gardner, aka Guard, you know, is basically Bobby and Guard in this story, the Tommyknockers. And a lot of people don't like this novel, but yeah, there's a new limited edition that is getting put out by oh, it's not Subterranean. Actually, maybe it is Subterranean Press. In any event, if you guys get the chance, go check that out. It's a beautiful 3-book, you know, amazing edition of this story. But I'm going to try to keep all of these brief so we can make the proceedings not insanely long, and you guys can enjoy your Valentine's Days or the preamble. If you do have a sweetheart of sorts that you're going to spend some time with. And I hope all of you do, because I do really feel like, you know, that genuine love and connection is an important aspect of human existence and our time that we have here. But Bobby and Guard is a tragic case of love, in my opinion, because of the fact that you feel how deep their love is for each other, despite so many extenuating circumstances. From the fact that Guard is a crazy boozer and has so many personal problems. The fact that Bobby, when we meet her in this story, you know, you can tell that they were lovers at one point and they still love each other, but it's more on the friendship tip, to quote Swingers. And so, yet when he returns and she is transforming, and you know that she has sinister intentions in so many ways, but she still has a soft spot for Guard. And I guarantee it's not just because of the plate in his head. It's because there is still a semblance of Bobby left in there. And so she does still love him to some degree. And, you know, it's just, without spoiling things too much, and there will be some spoilers here and there, guys. I'm going to try to keep them minimal, but you can't talk about some of these stories without letting some things go. But yeah, it ends in a sad way of sorts, if you're familiar with the Tommyknockers, and even, wow, far more so in the book. And I mean, I guess it's not super sad in the miniseries, at least. Well, the miniseries ending is totally different. So without further ado, we start things off with our honorable mention, which is Bobby and Guard from the Tommyknockers. Number 14, our first official entry is going to be from a novella that King originally did exclusively for Kindle, and then it made its way into a printed form. You can see it, and I believe in the Bizarre Bad Dreams. That's right, that's where it's collected in print. But this is a story called You Are, and it's a romance between a college professor, English professor to be specific, named Wesley Smith. He's very much a purist, and he's all about having all of his books, and doesn't like the fact that everybody's going around with these little electronic devices and reading on them. He's not into that. And his romance with the women's college basketball coach named Ellen Silverman. Now, the reason I like this story so much is because it starts out with a breakup. Yeah, right off the bat, you're privy to the information that these two, it had a romance, it had some serious significance, but unfortunately, they butt heads about things, like just silly bickering about technology and all kinds of other smaller bits, and so you can tell that there is still feeling there between them. However, they are estranged, to quote a wonderful Guns N' Roses song there right off the bat. But so Wesley decides to get himself a Kindle just to kind of spite her a little bit and show her, yeah, I can be hip, I can, do the things that you urged me and pushed me towards doing. And he ends up getting this crazy pink Kindle that, he can basically read just stuff from all kinds of interdimensions and stuff. This story ties in heavily with the Dark Tower. I recommend the hell out of this story. It's very cool in the fact that he realizes he can read not just newspaper articles from way back in our world and in the future in our world, and different publications and books and all these other things, but he also has the ability to read them from various other dimensions and universes and stuff like that. So yes, very much, the Wheel of Ka, all the intricacies of it and stuff. And so he discovers that something bad is gonna befall his lady friend, his special lady, as the dude would say. And he goes against the dangers of this technology to attempt to save her. I'm not going to say whether he does or not, but you have an interesting appearance by the Low Men in this. Yeah, it's dope. So yeah, I definitely, if you guys have not read it is romantic, and it very intriguingly ties in with the Dark Tower mythos. So our number 13 is going to be another one that I doubt a lot of you are familiar with, but it struck just such an emotional chord with me when I read it last year. It was originally in the paperback edition of Full Dark No Stars, and then reprinted in the Bizarre Bad Dreams. It's a story called Under the Weather, and it's a couple by the name of Brad and Ellen Franklin. And Brad wakes up from a nightmare, and he realizes, my wife is still sick in bed next to me, and he just, goes about his business of so diligently and lovingly caring for her. And, he's getting inquiries about, just her health, and worry from, other people on his floor, and, residents and neighbors and friends and stuff like that. And this is one where I can't really spoil the twist without, spoiling the entire story. But, it's especially with two elderly people in this, and that have been married for a very long time. It's a theme I'm going to come back to, because I feel like enduring love when you've been together for that long is one of the sweetest and most heartwarming things that you can encounter. So, Under the Weather, not Strange Weather, written by King's son Joe, but Under the Weather. Please seek it out. It's sweet, and it's definitely classic King. That's really not of the supernatural variety. The next one is another short. This one's only, I think it's less than 10 pages, and it's in one of my top 2, maybe 3 Stephen King short story collections that he's ever done. It's from Just After Sunset. It's a story called The New York Times at Special Bargain Rates, and we never even learned their last names in this, if I remember correctly. I just remember that no one says her name like him. Anne, or as he calls her, Annie, is, unfortunately, her husband James is dead, and he starts calling her, and he died in the World Trade, horrible 9/11 events and stuff like that, and I can't remember if it was the World Trade Center or one of the other things, but he died during 9/11, and he starts calling her, though, and he's calling her, warning her of things that are going to happen, and he's basically trying to save her life from just the other world, from the afterlife. And anytime love is able to transcend that, I just find it I find it so poignant and so beautiful and so just that hits you in the feels in that just heartbreaking fashion that few people like Stephen King can really, really do. And so I recommend the hell out of everything in Just After Sunset, but definitely New York Times at special bargain rates. They're actually trying to turn it into a TV series right now. I'm not sure if that would focus specifically on these two characters or if it would be just all 9/11 loved ones from, you know, the next life trying to, you know, help. There's quite a few stories about 9/11 and its connectivity and just the state of the world at that time in Just After Sunset, which is why I love that book so much, because much like the Kennedy assassination for generations before us, all of us in Generation X, millennials, whatever, yeah, you definitely, you know where you were when you saw the towers fall and just the ripple effect throughout our entire fabric of existence that it caused. So that was our number 12. So let's jump to number 11. This one goes to 11, guys. And it's from Mr. Mercedes. It is the very just beautiful late life, older detective, you know, hooking up with a slightly younger hottie. This is Bill Hodges and Janie Trelawney. Trelawney, I'm probably mispronouncing her name because I didn't listen to the audiobook. But yeah, it's just Hodges and Janie. Janie's sister was basically this woman who went crazy and committed suicide after Mr. Mercedes basically stole her vehicle and plowed it through all of these different people that were waiting at a job fair. Mr. Mercedes, the TV series, is tremendous, by the way. I recommend everybody check it out. And Mary Louise Parker and Brendan Gleeson, they do a very nice job of putting these two characters to screen, I must say, in their chemistry and attraction and stuff like that. And yeah, it's essentially one of those attractions that maybe comes out of grief and comes out of more so hormones than anything, but their romance is really, really, I keep using the term sweet, but yeah, it's really nice to see, you know, divorced Hodges, you know, just finding some love when, I mean, looking for love in all the wrong places, and he found it with a client, and that's a conflict of interest probably, but nonetheless, it's beautiful just the chemistry between the two of them. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, once again, to use that S word, it's sweet. And read the book, though. Read the book. It's there's some things I can't go into here. So if we're going to go to number 10, I know I mentioned that this is one of my two least favorite Stephen King books of all time, but that does not discredit the romance in Bag of Bones and the romance from another world, basically, between Joe and the writer Mike Noonan. He moves after just the grief from her tragic death to you know, this lake house of sorts, and you know, he's trying to get back into the groove. He ends up having kind of a little flingy thing with a younger, you know, mom and stuff like that. So once again, King is really funny in his older age, and I think he's just living perhaps vicariously through his writing, but he's got a lot of these stories of like the older guy cooking up with the younger girl. We see it a lot, though, in this society, so what are you going to say? But I felt so much more relevance from the romance that just resonates still with Mike for his wife, and she actually, with the forces he encounters, and you know, both of the otherworldly and maybe not necessarily, you know, I can't specify good or bad, you know, it's a jazz singer, but you know, and then also just I don't like this story very much, okay? I don't like the whole child custody aspects and all of these different things like that, but I do love just that endearing devotion and dedication that Mike's character feels for his wife, and she does have a presence still, you know, that is with him in this book. And so, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Bag of Bones, like I said, I still find merit in a lot of it. So, we're going to go to number 9. This is our first of 2 appearances from a character, and this is my dude Roland, yes, Mr. Deschain, the Last Gunslinger, and he has a seldomly read story, which I think is tragic because I love the hell out of it, but a lot of Dark Tower purists I talk to do not like the Little Sisters of Eluria. I love the Little Sisters of Eluria. I absolutely adore this story, and I adore it for the sheer fact that it's kind of the theme of rediscovering love when you never thought you'd find it again, sort of bit. And basically at this point, Roland is still young, but he has already lost the love of his life in a horribly tragic fashion. And so he is becoming that cold person that we see him as at the beginning of the first Dark Tower book, The Gunslinger, right? And so he's going through this pavilion at the beginning of this story, which is, wink wink, the pavilion that we see now dilapidated from the talisman, actually, which shows that those two exist in a similar dimension of sorts. But yeah, so as he's going through this place, he basically ends up getting attacked and taken in by these crazy nuns that are like straight up vampires or something. And it's sweet in the fact that one of these women in particular just finds a fondness for him and starts to basically fall in love with Roland. And as he sees the people, the other few gentlemen who are in there with him, be drained and in turn killed, their romance blossoms, and she decides to help him try to escape. And as it's been mentioned in the Dark Tower in later volumes and stuff, there was only one other that Roland loved besides his beloved Susan, and that was this woman, Sister Jenna. And so I really recommend actually the graphic volume of this that Marvel Comics did. It's beautifully illustrated, and it shows the sinister nature of this area where he is, and yeah, and the bittersweetness of this romance between the two of them. So yeah, I really, even though a lot of people talk smack, I love the Little Sisters of Eluria and the romantic aspect of it. So we're gonna go into our next entry. This is coming from Insomnia, and this is going to be Lois Chase, Chase, and I don't know. I believe it's Chase, and Ralph Roberts. Two in their twilight years who are both widowed and both dealing with insomnia, and yet find each other in the town of Derry, no less, where crazy shit will always be happening, yo. And yeah, they forged not just a friendship, but they were always kind of friends before, but they forge a romance which it's cool in the fact that they don't let their feelings get in the way of the goal at hand, which is so monumental and actually reverberates through various levels of the tower. This was the first appearance of the Crimson King in the back half of this book. There's this crazy guy, Ed Deepna, who is like a crazy, almost like Joker type card, who is going to kill a character that shows up in a later volume of the Dark Tower in book 7, and that death would once again reverberate through every level of the tower and pretty much all of the overlapping levels of existence and stuff. And so yeah, it's a beautiful romance in the fact that two people once again finding love when they loved the people that they were with for all those years more. And they actually are pretty frank about that subject in this book, in the fact that they have good years with each other, and or with their prior people, and then when they're assessing love with somebody else, and the comparison aspect and all these different things, but they're not discrediting it, but yet they're still not losing their admiration and their loyalty, I guess, to their respective spouses who have passed. And I mean, it's also beautiful in the fact that they come together and find love when there are such high stakes. And yeah, I gotta say, Ralph and Lois are it's a really great love story, man. I gotta say. So that was our 8. We are at 7 now, and 7 is actually one that some people might have thought was going to be a little bit higher up in this list. I thought about it being a little bit higher up in this list, but it's for the sheer fact that I am more of a fan of a tragic love that doesn't work out in this particular story, more so than the one that does. And we're talking The Stand, and we're talking Stu Redman and Franny Goldsmith. Now, the love story that I'm talking about isn't even really a love story as much. It's the lady that Larry Underwood gets himself caught up with, and that's just tragic and sad and whatnot. But when you get together in the apocalypse and you encounter some setbacks, obviously, but spoilers, everything works out for these two, and they have a kid, and their child is presumably also, with both of them being immune to the virus that killed 99% of the world, their kid's okay after they have it, and Stu doesn't end up having to go to Sin City with everybody else. And it's just a love story that I respect the hell out of it. There's a lot of people who just have everything go their way. in the realm of love, and so everything just seems all hunky-dory and shite. And also maybe there's a part of me that kind of relates with Harold a little bit, and the fact that Harold was the one that, left Portland with her and was just the overweight nerd and, so on and so forth, and in love with her. That was me as a kid. I was Harold. I was Harold to the Frannies. The Frannies were, like long-time high school crushes and stuff like that friend-zoned me the whole time. And so Stu Redman was the guy who ended up getting those girls when I didn't. And so, that's where I find it really, really nice, and it's a great love story to a degree. But for that reason, I didn't put Stu and Franny higher. You guys may think differently, but that's just my personal opinion, okay? Next up at number 6, number 6, I believe, because we still got 1, 2, 4, 5. Yep, it's going to be number 6. And so number 6 is another one that could have gone a little bit higher, but I don't feel like the love was the complete essence of this story, obviously. But we're going to it. No, we're not going Stuttering Bill and Bev. We are going the guy who she ended up with, and rightfully so. We are going Beverly Marsh and Ben Hanscom. Burning Fires, that beautiful poem, and September to February, January Embers. I cannot think of it. I feel like such a dummy. But, once again, I was Ben. And with making the Harold comparison and stuff, this story is actually where the love finally finds its footing later in life, and albeit it's when, Ben has turned his physique around and he's all stud muffin status now and whatnot. So, I mean, it's not quite the, the loser getting it, but, it's so sweet, the way that he, and I keep using that damn word, it's endearing to me seeing him try to pursue her as a youngster, because, that was me writing poems and putting them in the lockers of a girl in 7th grade and her not liking me and so on and so forth. But that's beside the point. The point is the fact that they reconnected, they found each other, and even though in the book, spoilers, yeah, she ends up having sex with Bill, married Bill, and and yet at the end of the story ends up with Ben. It's, Bev's kind of hoe, yo! But, it's the classic kind of love triangle thing that we've seen in really great stories and in really craptastic ones like Pearl Harbor. But it's a story as old as time. Unfortunately, it's one that a lot of us have probably found ourselves in. I did in my adolescence, and so, it's sweet in the childhood perspective, and then it's very validating as adults to see Bev end up with, the person that she's really supposed to from the beginning, at least in my opinion. So, now we jump to number 5. We're officially in our top 5, guys. How about them apples? Applesauce, bitch. That's right. This next one is, I believe King stated it as his personal favorite of all of his books ever. Crazy, right? Yeah. And it's one that he wrote late in life. It's right down there on the bottom in red. It's Lisey's story. Now, Lisey's story is, King has also said it's his most personal book because it's about a woman who had a very successful yet troubled husband with tons of obsessive fans named Scott. So this is the love story of, Lisey and Scott Landon. And Scott passes away, and Lisey basically is left to pick up the pieces, clean out his office, do all these different things. And the novel is really beautiful in the fact that it's a series of flashbacks to when they first get together in college, and just, you can tell that this is a very personal retelling in a lot of ways of King's own life and interactions with Tavi. And so, it's just so beautifully sweet anytime, in my opinion, you encounter, just how love still lingers and just won't go away when it was deep and true after somebody has passed away. And there's an otherworldly aspect to this, as you would expect, from King, when you start to learn the secrets of where her husband's inspiration came from and stuff. But the romance in this book is so deep because of the fact that you feel the love so genuinely, and how, despite the ups and the downs that are described here and there, nothing of a super significant variety. This is truly the beautiful love story of a woman who loses her husband earlier than she anticipated and still stood by him despite his eccentricities, his weirdness at times, and she still loved him. As I like to say, the most beautiful love is warts and all, where we accept the flaws of the person that we're with and, hope that they do the same, and we're able to find middle ground, and, that's what the realest and truest love is all about. I love Lisey's story. It's not one of my absolute favorite Stephen King books, but I love, because it ends up getting into some tropes in the back half, but anytime the genuine connection between the two of them is at the forefront, it is some of the most touching Stephen King stuff and truest and honest Stephen King stuff that I feel like the man has ever written, And so we now move on to our number 4, down to the nitty gritty, guys, and this is a book that I read about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, but I think it is one of the most wonderful love stories that King has ever written, and it's not the main basis of the story like Lisey's story is, for instance, but it's really, in my opinion, the heart of the story, especially with the way everything ends, and that's 11/22/63, Sadie Dunhill and Jake Epping. So this was beautifully done by J.J. Abrams for Hulu, in my opinion, and it starred James Franco. I don't like Franco and everything, but I did really like him as Jake in this particular role. Was I disappointed that they omitted the dairy subplot? Of course. You get to see Bev and some Beep Beep Richie stuff there briefly in one scene in particular that's really pretty. But anytime love is, you basically have to make a very, very big choice of, it's basically like saving a life versus, saving another life, or, it's a time travel story, as you guys saying. I'm trying to dance around the issue without being too spoilerific, with this being one of his newer books, and I also really recommend the series, like I said. But it's where, anytime you do time travel, Back to the Future taught us this, right? There's always going to be that little ripple effect, and how when things are changed in one reality, they're going to change significantly in another reality. And so one thing which is great about the book in comparison is that Jake makes many journeys back and forth and stuff, and so it's more a trial and error kind of thing, in contrast with just like a fluid journey. So some may like one, some may like the other. I personally prefer the book, but the TV series does a damn good job, and the best job that they do is, even though their love is a little more flawed, in the book, Sadie is a little bit more of a troubled character in the book in comparison with on screen, but just the way Jake protects her in the terror and just the maniacal insanity of her ex-husband trying to come after her, and also the big decision that Jake has to make at the end of the novel it's like one of those bam type things. It's where you get to the finish line and you realize, wow, if I proceed one way, it's like total fork in the road type status, And it also makes you wonder, he ends up with a lot of self-reflection by the end of the book, where he's essentially like, was the journey, was the destination worth the journey kind of thing, without spoiling. And so especially the very last scene in this novel, and in the TV series as well, it just broke my heart in the most wonderful way, though. It's very Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken in certain aspects, and there is a trailer that they did for that TV series on Hulu that I can't even think of the name of the artist, but the guy is essentially singing, "If I had my life to live over again, I'd still choose you again and again," and over and over again, and I gotta track down what that damn song is, man. And if you guys want to hear it, just track down the trailer for the Hulu 11/22/63 series. I think it's Bobby Darin, maybe. In any event, yes, Jake Epping and Sadie Dunhill have one of the most romantic and wonderful love stories that Stephen King has ever put to page. So now we are getting to my number 3. We're in the top 3 now, peeps. Damn Rizzle. And this is one that could have been number 1, almost was number 2, but the number 2 just kept sitting with me, because I hadn't reread the second little love bit in a while, and as I was going back through it before doing this video, I was just like, wow, I'm as floored as before. So number 3, as opposed to 1 or 2, is going to be Roland Deschain and Susan Delgado. That's right, and this is from Wizard and Glass, the Fourth Dark Tower book. I encounter a lot of fans that don't like Wizard and Glass, and you know what I say to that? Bam, sucker. They say it's too slow. They say whatever. Hey, I'm sorry for flipping you guys off. I didn't mean it. Maybe I should have just said read between the lines or something like that. That would have been a little bit more befitting for us video about reading. But I adore this tragic story of young love because, you know, so many of us have been there, and if you have, it is so relatable, and maybe not to the extremes that this one goes, but yeah, Roland is sent, you know, to this, to Hanbury Magus, and he ends up there with Bert and with Elaine, his two buddies in the original quartet, and they're these young gunslingers that are supposedly doing some investigating, you know, for back in Gilead, and so they're against his better will. Roland and this young girl Susan, who has already been, she's been just kind of bestowed is not the term. She's basically already lined up to be the new wife, or like I guess you might even use a term like concubine or something. Yeah, if we're gonna get all biblical and chisel about this, for the mayor of this place, because his wife can't produce children, and so Susan has been, she has been, you know, chosen and promised to be the. It's not even so much a bride, like I said. It's like, you know, an additional sub whatever, and bear him children. And against her will, despite this promise and all of this other stuff, and, you know, money and all these things that she and her aunt are supposed to be getting, you know, because her parents are no longer around, she forges this this affair of sorts with Roland, and it is such a beautiful rendition and representation of young love, and it echoes Romeo and Juliet so big time, guys, and for that reason it speaks so deeply to me. She haunts Roland throughout much of his journey, especially, you know, when you hear the occasional mention of her in, you know, the first book, The Gunslinger and stuff. And I'm not going to say how the tragic ending goes down, you know, and, you know, whether they're able to end up together or not, or, you know, just who may be lost in the process as far as, you know, friends and deaths and all this other stuff. But it really rises to a resounding conclusion, and it might be my number one for Stephen King love, if not for the fact that, you know, it's young and trying not to spoil. You guys will just have to read the story to see the depth here. But my number two is one that haunts me to this day, anytime I read it. I tried to get her to read this so many times. I'm like, you really need to read this story. Really need to read this story. Bought her a copy of Just After Sunset. I don't think she ever read it, but that's a story for another day, because the first story in that collection is called Willa. And this is the romance of David and Willa. We never find out their last names, but this is a story about just pursuing love even when you don't know the guarantees of it, or if there is gonna, you know, just essentially David is at a train station and he's there with all these other people, and their train has been delayed and he can't find his fiancée Willa. And he starts asking all these other people there with him who were on the train that got delayed, and he's just like, where's Willa, where's Willa, where's Willa? And they're like, she left, you know, blah, 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 we don't know where she was going, you know, so on and so forth. And so he's like, you know, the train, you know, she's whimsical, you know, she's a free spirit, and so on and so forth. We're going to miss this train, and we're supposed to be getting married, you know, once we get to that destination. And so, you know, against, you know, the judgment of the better judgment of everyone else, and everyone else is convincing him to stay, which is weird, you know, he's like, no, I gotta go find my fiance. And so he goes and starts scouring all these different places, and he finally finds her just kind of chilling and having a drink in this kind of cowboy bar. And, you know, he's like, are you okay? Is everything all right? And, you know, you can see the connection, but you also get, you know, once again, this, the depth of the free-spirited nature of this woman, of Willa, and it's a story that I just cannot talk about enough, but can't talk enough about without spoiling. So it's another one of these about just how love is able to really just surpass things that you wouldn't necessarily think it would be able to, you know? And so I cannot recommend reading Willa enough. There's a reason that this short from Just After Sunset, guys, beat all of these other noteworthy names, you know, from like Mike and Joe Noonan, like, you know, Roland and Susan, like, you know, Lacey and Scott Landon, like Sadie and Jake, I mean, and Bev and Ben. I mean, there is such a deep-rooted reason, and you guys may not agree with me, but this story, especially in, you know, as it starts winding down, you know, and they've been at the bar for a little while, and just the conversation and the realizations from their discussion and whatnot, it's just, wow, does it pack a punch, an emotional, romantic punch, and not a punch in a bad way, in just a very, very prolific and just, I love this story so much. I love Willa. Please, please, please read Willa. That's my number 2. Now, drum roll, brrr, what is the number 1 Stephen King romance, best Stephen King love story? Maybe it's a cop-out, but it's Steve and Tabby. Yeah, I know. I'm sure some of you are just like, boo! Booing the camera. You're just like, what are you doing, Fuego? That is a cop-out, homeboy. That is terrible. But you know what? I think the greatest love story that Stephen King has ever forged in his life is the one that he has lived. Now, we can't peer into their marriage and see troubles that they've had over the years. We know some of them were Steve's substance abuse, or, you know, we have no idea if they were infidelities that no one's talked about, or the press didn't break out, or anything like that. But what we do know is that he has dedicated book after book after book to his wife, Tabitha. He has been married to her for over 45 years, since 1971. They have 3 awesome children, 2 of which are authors. One is a really good author named Joe Hill, you know, and their daughter is an ordained minister and doing great things as well. So I would say that the greatest Stephen King romance that he has produced is the one that he has lived in his own life. I believe it's why he writes romance so well in his books. I believe without that sense of purpose and experience, characters like Jake and Sadie, and you know, David and Willa, and you know, so many of these others, Ralph and Lois. I mean, you can tell that so much of his personal experience, you know, in life goes into these characters, and I'm sure a lot of his wife's as well. You know, his interactions with her. I mean, you know, he has said many times that Lacey and Scott Landon would not exist in the way that they do if not for the dynamic that they have had in their marriage. And so, the number 1 Stephen King romance ever produced is most definitely the one that he has lived himself. And major props, because, you know, it takes a lot to stay with somebody for that amount of time. You know, it's, as they say, it's for better or for worse. And in an era where, in my opinion, people are so prone to just throw in the towel, say, screw it, I don't love this person. Love is not a sprint, people. Love is a marathon. And real love is sticking through the thick and thin and not giving up. And that's why when you see marriages that last these huge lengths of time, that's dedication. And, you know, that's, you know, people often mistake, in my opinion, infatuation and attraction, especially of the sexual variety, you know, for real, true love. I think that that's something that takes time to set in. That's just my 2 cents though, guys. You can tell I'm passionate about this subject. So, once again, let's count down everyone that we talked about today. Honorable mention from the Tommy Knockers, Bobby and Guard. Number 14, you know, February 14th being Valentine's Day and all. We've got Wesley Smith and Ellen Silverman from Number 13 was Brad and Ellen Franklin from the short story Under the Weather. Check it out in Bizarre Bad Dreams or the paperback of Full Dark No Stars. We have Annie and James from New York Times at Special Bargain Rates. Just After Sunset. Just go buy that book, damn it. Seriously. Next up we have Bill Hodges and Janie from Mr. Mercedes. Then we have Mike and Joe Noonan from Bag of Bones. We have Roland Deschain and Sister Jenna from Little Sisters of Euphoria. That's in Everything's Eventual, so please check that out, as well as the Marvel comic book. We've got Ralph Roberts and Lois Chassé from Insomnia. Then we have Stu Redman and Franny Goldsmith, The Couple of Gold from The Stand. Then we have Bev and Ben from It. Next up we have Lacey and Scott Landon from Lacey's Story, a beautiful, heartbreaking tale that I recommend to all of you guys. From 11/22/63, next up we have Jake and Sadie. Then at our top 3 from Wizard and Glass, Roland and Susan. Then at number 2, David and Willa. Please, 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 please read Willa. I know I'm building it up a lot, but for the eternal romantic within me, it's beautiful. And then lastly, the number 1, and rightfully so, is Stephen Tovey in real life, suckers. So I've been Jaime and Fuego. Gracias so much for tuning into this special Valentine's edition of Hail to Stephen King. You can find me on all social media sectors, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, just at Jaime and Fuego, like you see it spelled below. Please share this video with the hashtag Hail to Stephen King. If you have not liked or commented already, please do. Tell me if I got this list all wrong. Tell me if there's somebody who you think I unnecessarily omitted from this list. But I pretty much think I covered all of the bases very, very well. Subscribe to The Horror Show if you haven't. And once again, until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, cinemitos and constant readers across the globe. And until we get to meet each other once more, stay scared and read Stephen King just after sunset. Do it.